All right, welcome. I'm going to jump right into this because it's going to take a little bit of time. And as with before, when I turn the lidded box without a chuck, I will make sure that I upload the full video to my YT channel so that you can watch it later at your convenience. I was asked the question, one of my first lives, about turning without a chuck. Do you have to have a chuck? And the answer is no. Like we did last week, turned a lidded box without a chuck using jams and a faceplate. We're doing something kind of similar and completely different today. So first of all, we are using a faceplate. I have mounted into the lathe on a faceplate a waste block. It's just a chunk of wood. Hang on a second, I get a juggle. It's just a chunk of wood. This happens to be some old 2x6. It's treated. Be careful turning treated lumber. Don't do a lot of it. It's not real safe, the chemicals they use. So right here I have a face block, a waste block that's screwed to my faceplate, which then of course is mounted onto the spindle of the chuck. This is turned pretty flat, and then I flattened the surface on this piece of wood, which I am not sure what it is. I think it might be madrone, but I really am not sure. It's good hardwood though. So I'm going to use something very simple, but works and it works well, and that's hot glue. Going to be very liberal with the hot glue. If I can get it to start flowing, there she goes. Be very liberal with the hot glue because, well, safety. I mean, I'm going to be spinning this sucker around, so I want to make sure that it's held on pretty good. So I'm going to give it a good lot of hot glue. Now this I've done many times. For the first more than a year that I was turning, I did not have a chuck. So glue blocks and waste blocks was one of my primary methods. So you get a good slathering of glue in the middle there. You want to get a lot of pressure coming from your tailstock, holding that against it, and then you want to glue around the edges of the piece. That's just a little added insurance. You have to forgive me, I'm working with very little space. I'm in a half of a storage shed, so this is kind of one of the ways that you can start wood turning on a budget. So waste blocks are your friend. I still, even with a chuck, find myself using waste blocks quite often for certain things. Just don't quite know how to mount a piece, use a waste block. Have a piece that's too small, but you need it, like if you're turning a handle or something and it's just not quite big enough to get into the jaws of a chuck, use a waste block. You can always use a waste block to hold a jam. So this is just another effective way to do it, and it's a way to do it if you do not own a chuck. So hot glue, liberal, be liberal with the hot glue. Waste glue, use too much. Remember, we're dealing with a lot of force here, and this is spinning and moving. So the more glue, it's not going to hurt to have a lot of glue on there. I'm not going to say the more glue the better. It can get stupid and sloppy, but hot glue is strong and effective, so use it. Use it to the best of its ability, which means you need to make sure you have plenty there. Try to protect the bed of your lathe from the hot glue. I use little chunks of wood or whatever. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but it helps. The hot glue has a good resistance to torsion, to torque, and that the opposing turns. So hot glue works really well. Now you got to let your hot glue set. So that takes a couple minutes. So if anybody wants to ask any questions before I get started turning, this is a good time because we have to let this hot glue get set. But again, what we're doing is we are turning a bowl without a chuck. Now, I'm going to explain the procedure because it's counterproductive. If you've ever watched bowl turners who use chucks, they turn the bottom of the bowl first, turn the bowl around and hold it on the chuck somehow, and then hollow the bowl. Well, for this method, that I've found that I use, and there are other methods. There are a lot of other methods. This is just one I use. You do it backwards. You hollow the bowl, shape the outside, leave yourself a tenon, then you part it off with the hot glue, flip it around, and set up a jam chuck, which we will, I'll probably switch to my chuck just because I have jam chucks already turned. But you'll get the point when I show you how I do it. So you do it backwards. You hollow the bowl, the inside of the bowl first. Going to have a natural edge here. The bark is gone. So that's another thing we'll talk about real quick is wood turners. We distinguish differently between a natural edge or a live edge. You see these river tables and they call it live edge, but there's no bark on it. Wood turners consider live edge to include the bark. So that's live edge because it's got bark, as much bark as possible included. And if all the bark was gone, like here the bark came off, here there was no bark, but I got saw marks, no bark, then we call that natural edge. So this will be a natural edge bowl. It's going to have a kind of a funny, almost oval shape because I'm coming from the outside in. You don't have to do that. That's just the way I'm doing this bowl. You can put a square, flat block of wood on here, do the same thing, use the glue chuck method, the waste block method, glue it up, and turn a beautiful, very refined bowl. This method works really well. In fact, let me see if I can grab a bowl that I turned using a glue chuck, using a glue block and a jam. I forgot I've got some on my old pieces here. No, not that one. There we go. So this little cedar bowl, I turned using this method. Okay, so I glued it to a waste block, hollowed it first, shaped the outside, cut it off, left myself a tenon, turned it around and used a jam chuck, cleaned up the bottom, shaped the bottom, and I even was able to take, you can't tell how I held it on the lathe. Okay? So, again, the whole point here is somebody asked, can you do it without a jam chuck? Do I have to have a jam, or without a scroll chuck? And the answer is no. You do not have to have a scroll chuck. We can do this. We're going to make a bowl. We're going to make a pretty bowl. I think this is madrone. We're going to make a very nice bowl without using a mechanical chuck, except to hold the jam chuck when I reverse it. And that's just for time's sake, because the last demonstration took 3 hours, and that was a little excessive. So, it can be done. Now, how do you know when your hot glue's set? You can't see it, but it becomes opaque again. It becomes the same color as the stick originally. That means it's cooled up and your hot glue's holding. Use a tailstock as long as you can. You're not going to be able to use it the whole time, but this is your added extra safety. While I get this round, this tailstock is staying on the bowl. That just gives me that much more security while I'm getting it round. Make sure your gouges are sharp. I had a little sharpening session this morning. And this will be my first time ever turning madrone, so I'm really interested in how this goes. And again, we're doing this out of sequence. We're doing this backwards because we're going to use jam chuck. I think it's madrone. I'm not 100% sure. I got a box of wood from my father that came from his garden, and this is one of the pieces. And it's the only piece, besides the red cedar, which Western red cedar is obvious, it's the only piece he didn't label, but I think it's madrone. So it's a good hardwood. We're going to have some fun with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is start working to get this round, and I want to kind of tame this corner and set my outside diameter of my bowl. And then I'm going to counterintuitively work here, get my tenon set down here. Well, the tenon will be very last, but I'm going to work out here and start shaping the outside of the bowl a little, but primarily we're going to do it again backwards. Once I get this round, I'm going to hollow this bowl so we're working from the inside out rather than the outside in, which is not the way you do it when you use a jam chuck. Good morning. So let me get my face shield. As always, the minimum required protection for turning is safety glasses. However, I really recommend a full face shield. These are not very expensive. You get them on Amazon. They're sturdier than the ones you get at Harbor Freight because I've got this frame all the way around. Replacement plexi is not expensive. This is a handy thing to do. I'm using a Laguna 1216, Laguna Revo 1216, mainly because I don't have enough space for more. I'm working in half of a storage shed. The other half's crammed with the with my landlord's crap. So I can get some pretty decent sized stuff out of this lathe though. All right, start your lathe slow. Find a speed where it's going to balance and not be too jerky. This is pretty closely balanced, so I should be okay. Eh, 700 RPM is not a bad place to start. Again, we are turning a bowl without using a jam chuck. So the first thing I want to do is just get this round. Now I'm working way off the end of the tailstock because when I had these corners to knock off, now that I've got those corners knocked off, I can move my tool rest. So make sure that I can come to the side here and work it. And this is cutting pretty cleanly. This is not bad. This is decent wood. It's also fairly dry. I usually turn wood that's a little bit greener than this, but this is cutting really cleanly. Now I can get my tool rest in a little bit closer, gives me more control. So I can get this round. So right now we're just knocking the corners off, getting the ends down to round. We don't have to get too excited about shaping the outside of the bowl yet. When you're spindle turning things like goblets and stuff, you want to hollow first because you have the support of the wood, so you don't blow through the sides, things like that. Okay, so you want to keep the support of the body of the wood. So you don't want to come out and get your shape and get your tenon and all of that first. Again, we're doing this backwards because we're not using a chuck. So we want to get it round because when we get it round, it's balanced, it's smoother, the lathe stops shaking, and we then have more visual of what the bowl is going to be shaped like. But we don't want to get too excited about our outside shape yet because we need support because we're going to hollow it first. Again, this is glued with hot glue to a waste block. A chuck, this is a 4-jaw chuck or a scroll chuck. It is a mechanical device. This makes things very, very easy and very, very quick to move stuff. The jaws open or closed. Okay. If you're watching wood turning, you better get used to seeing a lot of sawdust. Sorry. Okay, it opens and closes, so it makes it so that you can change pieces, move stuff, work. It makes your workflow a lot faster, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to have a chuck. Yeah, this is called a scroll chuck or a 4-jaw chuck. And this happens to be a Nova G3. That's just the brand. There's, I don't know, a dozen brands at least. One way are really good, very powerful, strong chucks. In fact, most really big pieces, most of the guys that turn those use one-way chucks. This just happens to be the first one I was able to afford to buy. And it is very versatile. It's got 3 different sets of jaws. This is 50 millimeter. It's got 100 millimeter, and it's got 13 millimeter. So let's get this sucker around. Now that it's closer to round, I can speed it up a little more. About 800. Now don't take your glue lip away. Okay, I'm going to stop rounding there so that I don't lose my glue, because the glue is what's holding this and I have to start hollowing it. At this point, I need to start hollowing it. So I see where my outside edge of my bowl is going to be just inside of this lip. And I'll probably leave it, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch wide. Fairly wide. It's not going to be a real heavy bowl, but I'll probably leave it about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to start working in here, which means I have to take the tailstock away. So away goes my extra security. However, when we finish the outside of the bowl, the tailstock is a vital part of that formula. We can't do it without a tailstock. All right, I'm going to have to move the camera, and I'm going to have to move the power cord, so that otherwise I'm going to be elbowing the camera and all you're going to see is my shoulder. So give me just a second. I'll try to keep you where you can see the tools working. My janky tripod. Apologize for the moving. One day I'll be able to afford a multi-camera system, you know, in a bigger shop and all kinds of cool stuff. But right now we're doing it on my phone. Okay, so now we hollow. There's Mr. Wiggles. Okay. Again, we're doing this backwards. Usually, we turn the outside of the bowl, put some kind of either a recess or a tenon, either a mortise or a tenon, for the chuck to hold. But we're not doing it with a chuck, so we have to think backwards. Because what we're going to be using is a jam chuck or a friction chuck to hold the bowl once we get it hollowed, and hold it against the lathe so that we can continue and finish our piece. So this is not the normal way to do it. This is the way to do it when you don't own a chuck. We're turning at about 842 RPM. Turn at whatever speed you're comfortable turning. It's not a race. And when we're relying on a glue jam, on a waste block, faster is not better. We want to be as cautious as possible because hot glue is what's holding this to the lathe. And you can tell when I get past the curvature of the wood and get a solid cut. Now I'm using a stepping system. Which lets me set the bevel of the gouge against the step and get a smooth cut, because there's something against the back of the gouge giving me leverage. But I'm not really using a lot of pressure. I'm letting the gouge do the work. And again, the only thing holding this block of wood to the lathe is hot glue. So what I don't want is a catch, which will just launch this block of wood off the bowl, or off the lathe. However, you'll notice I'm not standing in the line of the fire. It's spinning this way, so if it launches, it'll either bounce that way or bounce that way, but it won't hit me. I'm 90 degrees away from it. Gouge is getting dull. All right, let me sharpen this gouge real quick. The more dull your gouge gets, the more kickback you get, and the more dangerous it becomes, and the more torque you're getting. So you want to try to keep your gouge sharp, because we're using hot glue to hold this on here, which is it's not dangerous, but it's certainly not the safest method. So to give yourself the most advantage, you want to make sure you keep your tools sharp. It's just the safest way to do it. Now, we're doing this without a chuck, and then I go over and use a not inexpensive sharpening system. If I had to do it over again, I'd buy the sharpening system before I bought the chuck. Straight up, I should have bought the sharpening system before the chuck. I'm using a 40-40 sweatback grind. This is just a 40-40, but I'm getting ready to transfer to the Ellsworth. Okay, so again, hot glue is holding this. We're turning a bowl without a chuck. The sharper you keep your tools, the safer you are. What you don't want is to create too much torque with a catch, which dull tools make the most torque. So in order to preserve that hot glue joint, because that's all that's keeping this bowl on here, you want to keep your tools sharp. So I will start. This is good hardwood. I'm pretty sure it's madrone. Nice tight grain, a good white color, but you get some nice, really nice. This is a nice piece of wood. That's all I got to say about that. I wish I knew for sure. That's much better. All right, now that I am almost 3 inches off the end of the tool, rest, I'm getting a lot of torque here, so I need better leverage. So I'll move my tool rest in, turn the piece because it's not flat edge. So I'll turn the piece to make sure that it clears, because what I don't want is to reach over, hit play, and do that. Okay, so I turn the piece, make sure my stuff's locked down, check my depth, just use my tool. So because I'm doing the stair step, that's about my deepest spot. I'll compare it to the top edge here, and I'm only, like I said, I'm about 3 inches in, 2.5 inches in. I've got another, to give myself a safety measure, I'm about halfway to the depth I want, so I can keep hollowing. Tool rest is too high. You want the point of your tool to be at the center. Check it. Always check it. Safest thing is to stop your lathe before you adjust your tool rest. Especially with a weird shaped rim like this, you don't want to get your fingers caught in there. It'll break your finger. Or worse. Alright, I'm going to check my depth again. A benefit of using a glue block like this is that I don't have to worry about running into the screws in my actual piece. The screws are in my sacrifice block. I'm not worried about it here. Yes, an adze works great, but it doesn't get round. It doesn't get perfectly round. All right, I can turn this in a little bit more, which gives me more leverage. Make sure it's clear. And you know what, Alex, since you're here, I'll show you that we can do this with the Carbide too. So this is a Carbide roughing cutter, it's called, or square end cutter. We can do the same thing. The secret to hollowing with the Carbide is not to try to just ram it in there and take big gouges out. The secret to using Carbide to turn a bowl is, let's get the light. The secret to using Carbide to turn a bowl is taking small bites. Dig in with the corner. Open it up. Come out. Just like that. And you can hollow it with the Carbide. I prefer bowl gouges to Carbide for this kind of work, but you can do it. I'm just demonstrating you can do it. Back to the traditional gouge. Alright, so with the 40-40 grind with a bowl this deep, I am now running into a problem. I'm going to bang the shaft of the tool against the side of the bowl, and I'm not going to get a clean cut. So I'm going to switch to a traditional 60-degree bowl grind, or a just a second, Alex, I'll answer that. I'm going to switch to a traditional bowl grind, 60 degree. It's also called a bottom feeder or a fingernail grind. And that's just because when we get this deep, the 40-40, I have to crank the tool out this far in order to get a good clean cut, and I can't because I'll bang the side of the bowl. Okay. With the Carbide, when you're hollowing, it's easiest to start from the middle and work out in little bites. That's the easiest method. I don't know if it's the right method because I generally don't use Carbide, but for certain things. I'm a big fan of the traditional tools, but that's the easiest method I've come up with. I've got about 1 more inch of depth, which is definitely well beyond the reach of my 40-40 grind. So I'll show you the 60-degree bottom feeder grind. Another benefit of the 60-degree grind is because the heel angle is so shallow, you can work quite a good distance off the end of the tool rest and still maintain a good deal of leverage. That's a benefit over the 40-40 grind, is you're still pretty safe and have a pretty clean cut way off the end of the tool rest, which you do not with the 40-40. Light passes, fairly clean cuts. And because I have to put a tenon on the bottom here, and I'm going to end up sacrificing most of that tenon, I'm about 3.5 inches deep, and I'm happy with that. That's all the deeper I need to go. Clay or something? No. I'll finish this with food safe finishes. Beeswax works perfectly fine. It's been used to finish wooden bowls for thousands and thousands of years. I use some other stuff, but the finishes I will use will make it food safe. It's arguable that most finishes that polymerize are food safe because they polymerize or essentially kind of turn into plastic. I prefer natural finishes. I am very much a fan of Brad's Workbench tongue wax finish, which is a combination of tongue oil and carnauba wax, 100% pure tongue oil, which is a polymerizing oil. Walnut oil works really well too. Walnut oil is a good finish. One of the few natural oils that polymerize. All right. Wanted to open up that side a little bit. Now we'll fix our corner here. And because you're here, Alex, I'll switch to the carbide again, but I'm going to change bits. This is called the finishing bit with the carbide. It's obviously it's round. You use this one a little bit different than the other one. This is really good scraper for the bottoms of bowls. It works really, really well as a scraper. Good to see you in here, Brad. If you guys want to talk about finishes, Brad is the finish man. Brad can tell you all about food safe finishes. This is my finish guru in here watching me make a bowl. And I absolutely love his products. So ask Brad finish questions. Sorry to throw you under the bus, brother, but I'm trying to make a bowl without a chuck. Okay, so using the carbide finishing tool. At least that's what it's called. You can cut from the inside out. You can also cut from the outside in. Another key with carbide, turn it up on its side. Not too bad. Now, I will tell you that I would not eat out of this bowl because it's got insect damage, which is probably why it broke in the storm when it was taken down. And see, that's So probably the reason this branch broke in the storm was because it was being eaten by insects and it was starting to break. It's also got a big crack in it, which I could seal. There are things I could use to seal it, but that allows things that would get gross to get into the cracks and grow. So this would be more of a decorative bowl, something like you throw your keys in when you walk in the door, something like that. Also the natural edge, again, lots of nooks and crannies where gross things can grow. So, but on the other hand, human beings have been eating out of wooden bowls for millennia. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But the point of this is to show how to turn a bowl without a chuck. So I'm not going to go into finishing. I'm not even going to bother sanding. I'm just making the bowl without a chuck to teach you that it can be done. So we have the inside hollowed. Now we start shaping the outside. With the key, the focus of making ourselves a tenon down here, which is how we're going to hold the bowl against our jam chuck in order to finish the bowl. This is a chuck. It's a mechanical holding device. The jaws either expand or contract, and it's a very, very fast and versatile way to hold the wood in order to turn. However, you don't have to have a chuck. The whole point of today is learning how to do it without a chuck. You don't have to have a chuck in order to do things like make bowls. So what I'm going to do is start shaping the outside of the bowl. I'm not going to go to the extent of putting my tenon on yet, because when I start putting the tenon on, it's going to part the bowl off of my glue block. So that's last. That is the absolute last. Yeah, chucks are expensive, but you can make nice bowls without them. Back to traditional tools, just because it's what I like the most. Now remember, I left myself a little flat edge here, so the first thing I'm going to do is round that, start shaping the outside of my bowl, but get rid of this flat edge so that I'm just working with a round piece. Okay, so now I'm just going to start making a V, which is going to follow the inside lip of the bowl and start shaping the outside so that it matches the inside. And I'm roughly a ½ an inch thick here, which is good. That's not bad. I need to take just a hair more off. But I'm going to start making a V here, which will give us the shape of the bottom of our bowl so that then we can work into our tenon. Gouge is getting dull. Stop and check your shape often. Make sure that you're parallel to your inside of your bowl. I'm getting too far off my tool rest again. So I checked the shape again, and I'm right there on the hip or the curve of the bowl. But what I want to do is check my depth, because I need to make sure. Okay, so I am right in line with the curve of the bowl. I don't want to get too close to here because I don't want to remove my glue that's holding my bowl on. But I need to get in. My V-meat needs to be deeper, so I've got to start cutting closer and kind of dancing with the danger zone over here. When I start taking that glue out, I lose my control. I lose a hold of the bowl. So I have a fairly consistent width of the walls right here to the hip, I'll call it, of the bowl. I'm turning the corner all right, and a lot. This line you cannot really see. Right here is actually exactly the bottom of the inside of the bowl, so that means I need to give myself a ½ inch down. So I'm going to mark myself a line. Give myself a ½ inch down from there, and that's going to maintain the thickness all the way around the curve. So what I want to do is aim my gouge to start cutting to that line. Again, being very conscious of the fact that if I get too close to this end, I start losing my hot glue, which is what's holding this bowl on here. So I'll just keep aiming my V-cut for the little depth line I gave myself. Keep that curve continuous, knowing that I have to leave myself a tenon in order to hold the bowl reversed, finish turning it. Now we're starting to get to where it's too narrow for my big bowl gouge, so I'll break out my 3/8 inch bowl gouge just so I can get a little closer in there. The less material I have to remove while it's in the jam position, the safer I'm going to be. At this point, it's too narrow even for that. So I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch parting tool. Again, leaving myself room. I've got plenty of room for the bottom of my bowl. Now I'm going to start working on parting it off a tenon so that we can turn it around and do a jam chuck in order to hold the rest of the bowl so that we can finish the rest of it. So again, what we've done is we've gone backwards. We've gone from the inside out rather than the outside in because we do not have a scroll chuck to hold the bowl. So this is one method. This is not the only method, but this is one that I have used in order to make a bowl without using a jam chuck. So at this point, we need to part this bowl off, leaving as much of a tenon as we can. So we can start to creep closer to our glue, which still, I mean, this sucker is solid. Hot glue, you'd be amazed at how much power hot glue has. But there's also a whole mess of hot glue in there. I'm going to sharpen this parting tool a little bit. Just basically putting a fresh burr on it with a diamond card. These are like $8 at Harbor Freight. Not expensive. Okay, now I've got my tenon here, fairly narrow, but the safest way to finish parting this off is a saw. Because what I don't want to do is launch it across the room. So, it's a little dovetail saw or little pull saw, narrow pull saw. It's very narrow, very slim. $11 at Lowe's. It's a really decent little saw. As you'll see, it makes fairly quick work of this. Okay. Now we're off of there. Yeah. Not sure how long that crack's going to hold. Glad we didn't go thinner because of that crack. Could be a disaster. Okay. So now, how do I get this onto that so I can finish this? Jam chuck. I already have part of the wood's own self and my waste block. And the glue's probably going to hold, but it's not the end of the world if the glue doesn't hold because I still have the waste block. So what I'm going to do is turn this down so that it fits inside the diameter and give it a bit of a bowl shape so that it fits inside there so that I can jam the center of the bowl onto the center of the jam chuck. So set my bowl out of the way. Get back to my turning tools. Now here, when you're trying to set up something like this and you want to work fairly quickly, is where Carbide shines. I want to make sure that the tool hits the center. I'm a tiny bit low. I'm just going to start peeling it away in the bowl shape. Oh. Lost half my glue jam. That's okay. I still got my waste block. Also notice I'm standing over here 90 degrees out of the way. I'm about 45 degrees out of the way of the line of fire. That shot straight down missed me completely. We got to turn all that away so we have a flat surface. There we go. Get the glue out of there. Now let's see how well that fits our bowl. Probably a little too big. No, that's pretty good. Okay. So, this is how we're going to hold our bowl against the drive center. It's called a jam chuck or a jam block. Now, you could turn this so precise that the bowl locks into it. If you want to go that far, knock yourself out. But you don't have to. What you do have to do is have your tailstock, because the pressure from the tailstock pushing against the jam chuck is what's going to hold your bowl in place. And then we get back to being one of the most secure ways you're going to hold a bowl, because you've got it pinned between 2 points. I use shelf liner. Get this at the dollar store to pad so we don't mark up the inside of the bowl. Fit the bowl over. Now here is the tricky part. We're going to bring our tailstock up. Now we can sit and try and measure or use a center finder and try to find the center. But if you don't have them, it's not the end of the world. Give it your best guess at where the center is. Bring your tailstock up gently. Lathe speed turned down. And probably the easiest way to do this is bring your tool rest up so you have a place, so you have something steady to compare it to. Lathe speed way down. Touch your thumbnail. You hear that? That means it's not straight. You can also see it's not straight, but it's obviously not in the center. Okay? So this is just a little guesswork. You're just going to tweak it over a little bit. Try it again. Nope, not centered. Try it again. So you can see, no, so you can get it eyeballed. Ooh wee. She's dancing. Okay, that's a method. Let me show you a way that makes it easier, but it costs a little bit more. This is a 60-degree live center, meaning at the end is a cone, 60-degree angle. This is a live center with interchangeable tips, and it's got a flat tip. That gives me a little bit more advantage when I'm trying to level out my bowl when I'm doing it this way, because this is cut straight in. So I have a little bit that pretty darn good. Just a little tip. This system with the interchangeable points, I think, cost $60. I found it on Amazon. I don't even know what brand it is. Some off Chinese brand. But I'm pretty darn close to center. So from here, finish your bowl. And again, using the carbide, now, what I didn't do was all the sanding and everything, doing the finish. I wanted to show that you can turn a bowl using a glue block, a sacrifice block, a face plate that sacrifice block is screwed to, or glued to. Face plate, sacrifice block, glued to the bowl. Then you reverse it like this using a jam chuck in order to turn the outside of your bowl. Obviously, you would have finished the inside of the bowl completely, sanded, put whatever finishes you wanted on before you flip it over. That's why you use the shelf liner. You do the outside of the bowl, you sand it, get it all how you want, put your finish on it, and then you can use your chisels. You can use your sander. You can use whatever you want to flatten off the bottom of the bowl. Doesn't matter what method you use, but you can use that method to flatten off the bottom of the bowl. And there you have a complete bowl turned without a scroll chuck. It's absolutely doable. Absolutely doable. Once again, I will upload this on my YouTube channel. Link is in my bio. Don't forget to check out WattaiWoodturning.com. I've got a couple new pieces on there. How thick walls do I usually keep? It depends on what I'm turning. It really does. Hang on, let me grab the other one out, the one I showed at the beginning. When I do a natural edge bowl or a live edge bowl like this, because the point is to show the nature, is to show that this is the wood, I usually like to keep it thicker so you see more of that grain. Now this little cedar bowl, this is only less than a quarter of an inch thick, maybe 3/8 of an inch, maybe even or a quarter inch. I'm sorry, yeah, it's about a quarter of an inch thick. This is cedar. This I think is madrone. But this is just a little light, simple little bowl. It depends on what you're turning. I use this. This is Chechen. This is just a little shop bowl I use. It's a little cup that I hold parts of my pen turning stuff in. And this is less than a quarter of an inch. So it just depends on what you're making, what you want to do. The box I turned out of cherry last week, which the video's on the YouTube channel. This is for sale, by the way, for $30. I'll show you the box you watch turn. Okay, this box, this is less than a quarter of an inch thick. And you still get that good friction fit. And I did not use a scroll chuck to turn this box. I used jam chuck method just like I used it, well, similar to what I used here. Okay, so you can absolutely turn very fine pieces. I mean, this is a beautiful, very nice, very simple little bowl. Good finish on it. It's just nice and smooth. I even did leave a little bit of a bark inclusion. That's a very nice little bowl, and it was used just the same way we did this. The way we just did this, I did it exactly the same way. Hollowed it first, flipped it over, used the jam chuck, finished the bowl. Now this bowl, the reason I chose this piece of wood, to be very honest with you, is this crack. I knew this wouldn't survive very long if I turned it thin. So I was willing to sacrifice this piece of wood in order to make the demonstration. This is not finished in any means, and frankly, because the crack is so bad, it probably isn't worth finishing it all the way. But it was perfectly adequate to show the technique. No, I'm recording. When you record live on, when you do a live on, what are we on? The Clock app, it saves your live. Then you can download it and upload it to your YouTube. That's what I do. There might be another way to do it. I don't know. That's just what I'm doing. So here, let me grab another piece that I turned using the jam method. This is another little cedar bowl. Just a little cedar bowl. Nothing special. I turned this on Easter of 2018. Just a very simple, smooth little bowl. So that's it for this morning. That's the demonstration, is turning a bowl without a chuck. Again, links are in my bio. You can watch this. It'll take about half an hour, 45 minutes for me to get it downloaded and uploaded onto my YT channel. But you will be able to watch it in its entirety. I do this free of charge, so if you'd like to help me out, buy some of my work. Go to wataiwoodturning.com, links in the bio. Check out my stuff. I also do custom orders. I make pens if you want a pen. Things like that. Hit me up. Hit me up. All right. Any other questions regarding how to turn a bowl without a chuck? No, I'm not a Twitch streamer. Maybe I'll look into it, but not at the moment. I don't do Twitch. Tools. What's tools? What's the question? There are lots of tools. There's all kinds of things. I can do rings. I haven't done it. It's not something that I do often. Let's put it that way. But I can do rings. Message me, hit me up if you're looking for something. We'll see what we can make happen. I have the right tools to make a ring. It's just not something I do frequently. Any other questions? All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate you joining me.